maybe like the newer generation that's coming now, they are sort of, they have a much more closer, they're more closer to what a North American kid might be like. But back in our generation, it was just like, work hard. That's it.
Yeah. And I think also in the banking, a lot of people sort of, have that notion that it's 9 to 5. A lot of people ask me that, when I'm like mentoring or talking to people, having conversations, coffee chats, like, so how's the work life? Like, you work from 9 to 5? I said, maybe there are areas that require 9 to 5, but I haven't been in those areas because I think it's not about 9 to 5. It could be 8 to 4. It could be 8 to 3. It could be 8 to 8. Depends on what you're doing. Depends on what you're working on. What is your responsibility and how much time it takes you to complete that. If you're very efficient, you might be able to get that job done in like 3 hours, 4 hours, and you can chill. I mean, what I'm trying to say is everybody has a different learning curve. The amount of time it takes for them to perform a job. You don't measure those performance of those jobs from 9 to 5. You measure it on what is your accomplishment in the task that you've been given. If you focus on that, I think you're right. Actually, when I came from here, I was like, okay, I have to work longer. I have to stay at least beyond my manager in the office. He cannot see me leave for home, right? Whatever might be the reason. And I think I've learned that I think it's a common currency across the world. You have a job, you get it done. Doesn't matter. Now, of course, some people are strictlers and some managers want you to be in the office for this time. But I have never had this job. I've been very fortunate that people have been, my managers, my leaders have been very objective from that perspective.
2 things for sure. One is set the vision of the project or the thing that needs to be done and let the team figure out how to do it. Don't need to micromanage them. Yeah. Focus on, are they giving you results? Great. How they get it done, whether they work 2 hours, 1 hour, or 8 hours. As long as they're hitting the deadline, they're doing great work, which was outlined at the beginning. I don't care. Like I'm the kind of person who's like very hands off when it comes to like guiding and working with teams. It should just be focused on the output and the results. That's it.
I think, and just to like maybe add something in there, you want to set the objective, the vision, the objective, and let the person who's been tasked to do that job figure out how to do it because you're not developing them.
Bang on. I totally agree.
If you tell them how to do it, how will they know how else could it be done?
That is so spot on, man. I think, and maybe they have a better way of doing it.
Yeah.
And you can learn from them.
I think one of my key mentor in my current organization clearly makes that distinction of keeping the brief very clear, but how do you achieve that brief is up to you. And you could keep improving that as you see fit, because if you don't do it yourself, you would never develop. I think that's really important. That's a luxury, I think.
Yeah. I totally agree with that sort of philosophy and sentiment and sort of that approach to leadership is that you don't micromanage people and you like that saying that teach the person to fish versus, give them the fish.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely, I totally align with you. I agree with you that the only way they can learn is if they struggle and apply their thinking. They apply critical thinking and try to figure out, okay, how will I solve this? And you let them know that if you're struggling, you can't figure it out, come to me.
Yeah.
I'll help you.
Yeah.
But still don't give them the answer.
No.
Give them
the feedback.
Yeah. Give them the feedback.
Feedback that it's not, and be honest.
Yeah.
Do not, like, I see a lot of times, especially in the Canadian context, and mind you, like, Canadians are lovely people and they don't want to really sound critical or rude or harsh. What happens in that is like you end up missing giving critical feedback. That critical feedback that can actually make you stop speculating what might have gone wrong in my submission. Right? Instead, you know what went wrong. Right? So you can not stop speculating and focus on that area and then make it better.
You know what comes to mind why I'm laughing is because when I was in India and culturally, it's like if I'm working on something, my partner would just come across, if he comes across to my desk and he's like, he sees my screen and he sees me like making something, he'll be like, what the fuck is this? And just by saying that, I know what I'm doing is not on point and there's no further explanation required.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas
this is when you're running a business, right?
When I was, and we had that sort of very like that radical candor.
Yeah.
Where we could express and get to the point. Whereas in the sort of the North American context, you have to apply like the sandwich approach where you're like, oh, you're doing an amazing job. And why don't we explore this a little bit more like this? And so you're very gentle with the feedback. And even when I was, let's say, working in Bombay, I remember my boss, Rahul Johri, who was like the national creative director at that time, he would just look at me like, this is shit. And it's like he just cuts through and just you're not wasting time.
Yeah.
But there is that trust that it's not about me, that what I'm doing right now, this is not making sense.
Yeah. And that also builds resilience in the person who's accepting the feedback that, okay, I got to go back and do it. Not being oversensitive or being raised to be very oversensitive about a feedback and gets completely thrashed. Actually, funny, just 2 days ago, my boss, he gave me a feedback. I did this deck. It was a 3-pager and I wanted to hit it in this 3 pages. And I thought I did a good job, polished and very good. I said, hey, can you read it and give me some feedback? He was leaving for the day and he's like, I read the deck, looks fine. I don't know, I'm not feeling it. And he said, maybe it's fine, maybe I'm overthinking, but I don't feel it. I know everything's there, but I don't feel it. And he left. I was so embarrassed with that feedback because I knew the content, I know everything. Maybe I was not focused enough to make sure that the key point is being reflected. Mind you, I actually spent an hour on that again just to change one of the 2 key messages. And then when you read that with the context, it became clear. And I told my boss, I was like, I was actually very embarrassed that I got the feedback on a content that I know it. Right? But you could miss it. You could be in a different frame. You could be thinking about something different. You could be not, I think one of your sort of content that you posted and published, you say, it's important to read the audience, right? Maybe I did not read the audience. Maybe he saw somebody else in the audience. I saw somebody else in the audience. That's where the difference was. But that thing that he mentioned, he did not hesitate at 5:30 in the evening saying that, I don't know, it looks great, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely this muscle. It's like a muscle and a skill that you develop is to, when somebody gives you feedback, how to handle it and to detach it from yourself. I mean, of course, unless you have an atrocious manager and a horrible boss who criticizes you, right? And makes it personal.
Yeah.
And and as human beings, we're intelligent enough to know that this person actually cares about me and they want me to improve and they're actually being critiqued about the work, not about you. And I think that's a big skill that is so crucial across the board, whether you're working in a bank or you're working in an agency or you're working in consulting. And let the feedback come and move on. Don't get hung up with oh, what did this person say? And then keep thinking about it for a week. I've just sort of learned to detach I'm it's like strong opinions held loosely. So it's you're very passionate about the work, but you're also I don't care. And that gives you that sweet spot of you put in your heart and sweat into it. But if it doesn't work, it's okay.
I think that's a very important point. And I remember when, at TD Bank, for the first half of my career has been spent on structured areas commercial, corporate credit, banker, being a banker, having a portfolio, risk management and all that stuff. And going into product management where, you mentioned this thing, my first presentation that I'm working on, it's due on a Friday and Thursday. And I show it to my boss. And he's he looks at the presentation and he's like, Okay, 1 second. He goes in, he calls the VP that we are supposed to present, comes back, he's like, we're not prepared for the meeting tomorrow. This deck wouldn't do. I was so heartbroken because I came from a culture where I had a book, I had clients who respected me. I was an advisor. I said to them, how do you do what you need to do? I had a portfolio. I had somebody who, an admin assistant who did all the work, and I had a team, right? Like I was so heartbroken, and so basically the presentation got canceled because I did not do a great job, and it was not ready. Saturday, Sunday, I sat in a Starbucks and redid it. Sunday night, I sent it, and my boss saw it on Monday, and he's like, I see you've put in hard work. I see that you've moved from Thursday to Sunday quite a lot on your own, but this still wouldn't do it. And to me at that point, I thought I made a mistake, and the job that I took, maybe I'm not fit for product management. Because in product management, what I was learning through that was how important it's to have a clear narrative. What is your narrative? And what are you asking for? Or are you leaving it for your executive to figure out what is the ask here or what's the interpretation here? I couldn't get it. I had to do it so many times. It was one of the toughest part of my career, getting into product management and not being able to perform at the level that I performed in consulting, as a banker. And I had a manager who was very tough. It was very tough on me. He was a sort of a stickler in terms of how the decks need to look like. And I think I at the end, I learned quite a lot. Like, people might say that, hey, get rid of the decks. Okay, fine. There's an argument. How much do you want to spend time? Forget the decks. Do you know how to tell your story? It could be a scribble on your sort of a page, but do you know how to say it? You will only know it when you've gone through the grind of coming to a point where you're clearly saying, I don't have 20 things to say in one slide. I just have 2 things that I want you to take away, because this is my message and here's my ask. I think that was fantastic. 18 months, I think I was very miserable.